Have you ever sat quietly and wondered, when did things change between me and my children? You spent years raising them, changing diapers, staying up through sleepless nights, guiding them through heartbreaks and triumph. You gave up weekends, vacations, and sometimes even your own dreams to help theirs come true. And now, when you speak, they interrupt. When you offer advice, they brush it off. When you need help, they're suddenly too busy. And worst of all, you feel like somehow you've become invisible. If that feeling is familiar, please know you're not alone. Many parents reach a moment in life when the roles start to shift. You were once the protector, the teacher, the one they ran to for everything. But now, it feels like they've stopped seeing you the same way. Sometimes they treat you more like a nuisance than a guide, or worse, they make you feel like a burden. And that kind of pain, it cuts deeper than almost anything else. It's natural to want to react, to remind them of all the things you've done, to get angry, shout, or withdraw. But here's the truth, and it may surprise you, trying to demand respect almost never brings it back. What actually works is something much more powerful and far more dignified. That's what we're going to talk about today. Because there are simple but powerful things you can start doing, starting right now, that can completely shift how your children see and treat you. Not through guilt or arguments, but through quiet strength, calm boundaries and self-respect. These aren't tricks. They're real-life shifts that can restore the dignity and connection you deserve. Let's start with something that might hit close to home, trying too hard to please them. Have you ever said yes when you really wanted to say no, just to keep the peace? Or gone out of your way to do something for your children, even when it made you feel uncomfortable, just so they wouldn't be upset when you really want to say no? Many parents do this without realizing. Maybe you rearranged your whole day to babysit the grandkids even when you weren't feeling well, or you let them speak to you in a tone that made your stomach turn, just so you wouldn't seem difficult. But here's what's important to understand. The more you chase their approval, the less they respect you. Not because they're ungrateful or bad people, but because human nature tends to value what stands strong, not what always yields. There was a woman I once met, Margaret. She had raised 3 children with everything she had, but as she got older, she started stepping aside more and more. She let them make decisions about her home, her health, even her money. "I just want to keep the family together," she said. But the more she gave in, the more they stopped listening. She thought she was being kind. What they saw was someone they didn't have to take seriously anymore. You see, respect doesn't come from sacrifice, it comes from self-respect. When you begin putting yourself second in everything, you quietly teach the people around you that your voice, your needs, your time, they don't matter as much. And people respond to that message. So if this sounds familiar, let me say this clearly. It's time to stop bending over backward. It's okay to say no. It's okay to set limits. You are allowed to speak up when something doesn't feel right. You are allowed to take up space, and you don't need their permission to do so. Respect starts with you. The more you honor your own boundaries, the more others will too. It doesn't mean being rude. It just means showing your children that your time, your energy, and your presence are valuable, and that you're not afraid to stand tall in your truth. Now let's talk about another reaction that's tempting but rarely works: arguing. When someone talks down to us, our first instinct is often to push back. You want to say, "How dare you speak to me that way?" Or "Do you remember everything I've done for you?" And while that response might be justified, it usually doesn't change anything. In fact, it often adds fuel to the fire. Here's something that can truly shift your experience. Stop arguing. Start leading. When you respond to disrespect with anger or emotional outbursts, it shows that the other person still has control over your inner peace. But when you respond with calm, measured confidence, it sends a completely different message. It says, "I don't need to raise my voice. I know who I am. Let me tell you about Frank's story. a retired teacher I knew. In his classroom, students respected him for decades, but at home his adult children barely listened. They talked over him, dismissed his concerns, even mocked his ideas. At first, Frank fought back. Every conversation turned into a debate. Every disagreement ended in shouting, and still, nothing changed. Then, something shifted. Frank decided to stop fighting. He still shared his thoughts, but calmly, without trying to win. He stopped chasing their respect, and started embodying it. He carried himself like someone who already had nothing to prove, and something amazing happened. His children began to notice. They started listening more, not because he yelled louder, but because he stopped playing the same old game. You don't have to fight for respect. You just have to live it. Let your calm become your power. Let your tone carry your strength. You don't need to convince your children to see your worth. They'll feel it in your presence. And one more truth that might feel heavy, but also freeing. You don't need your children to fulfill you emotionally. That doesn't mean you don't love them deeply. Of course you do. But the more you depend on them to make you feel appreciated, the more the dynamic shifts in the wrong direction. People, yes, even our own children, respect those who are emotionally independent. When your sense of happiness, your sense of peace, comes from within, not from how often they call, how sweet they are, or how much they do for you, they begin to see you differently, not as someone clinging to the past, but as someone with a rich and meaningful life of their own. I remember Helen, a beautiful soul who had given everything to her children, but when they grew up and moved away, she was heartbroken. She waited by the phone, she called every day, she reminded them how much she missed them, and they started pulling away. She didn't understand. She was giving love. Why weren't they returning it? Then one day, she decided to focus on herself. She joined a dance class. She met friends for lunch. She started reading again, painting again, laughing again. And do you know what happened? Her phone started ringing more. Her children wanted to hear about her life. They missed her, not just her attention, because now, she wasn't chasing their presence. She was attracting it simply by living full. So if you've been feeling that ache in your chest when they don't call, or that quiet sadness when they don't visit, remind yourself your worth doesn't come from how much attention they give you. It comes from within you. And the more you tend to that inner light, the more others will be drawn to it, naturally, respectfully, and consistently. When you begin to step back emotionally, just a little, not in anger, but in strength, something begins to shift. Your children stop seeing you as someone constantly waiting for their approval, and start seeing you as someone who values themselves. Someone with depth, confidence, and quiet power. That shift is subtle at first, but it's real, and with time, it becomes undeniable. But to truly rebuild that foundation of respect, there's something else just as essential: boundaries. Strong, clear, and loving boundaries. Now, boundaries aren't about walls or shutting people out. They're about teaching others how to treat you. And believe it or not, many adult children push boundaries not because they're intentionally disrespectful, but because the boundaries were never clearly defined to begin with. Think about it. If your children interrupt you constantly, make major decisions without your input, or speak to you in a tone that makes you feel small, it's likely not because they're cruel. It's because at some point, those behaviors were allowed and never corrected. Not out of weakness, but maybe out of love or a desire to avoid conflict. But here's the thing: love without boundaries can turn into resentment, and silence over time becomes permission. Let me tell you about Robert. He was a proud, retired businessman, confident in every room, respected by everyone who had ever worked with him. But at home with his grown children, things were different. They interrupted him mid-sentence. They rolled their eyes when he offered advice. They spoke to him as if he didn't know how to live his own life. At first, he let it slide. It's not worth arguing, he thought. They're just being stressed or tired. But each time he stayed silent, they pushed further, until one day, during dinner, one of his sons snapped at him for the way he handled a simple story. That night, something changed. Robert didn't yell, He didn't shame them. He simply waited, and when things calmed down, he said calmly, but firmly, "You don't have to agree with everything I say, but I expect to be spoken to with respect, and if that's not possible, I'll excuse myself from conversations like this." It was quiet after, but something powerful had happened. He didn't threaten. He didn't argue. He just made it clear, "This is the standard. This is what I allow in my presence." And over time, it worked. His children realized he meant it. They didn't lose access to him, but they began to earn his engagement. Respect became part of the new dynamic, not because he demanded it, but because he required it. Boundaries are not about control, they're about clarity. And when your boundaries are clear, the people in your life, yes, even your children, begin to show up differently. They realize your time, your energy, and your company are valuable. Not guaranteed, not owed, but cherished. Now, there's one more pattern that often gets overlooked, and this one can be especially hard for parents. It's the habit of giving over and over again, without appreciation. You know what I'm talking about. You offer to help. You give advice. You give time, energy, sometimes even money, because that's what you've always done. And maybe in your heart, you're not even doing it to get something, but still, it hurts when it goes unnoticed, when they don't say thank you, when they expect it, when they take and take but never pause to check in on you. It's natural to want to give. That instinct doesn't go away with they. But here's what's important. When you keep giving without boundaries or acknowledgement, you don't teach them to love you more. You teach them to expect more. And slowly, your generosity becomes background noise, something they don't even see anymore. George, a father of 3, was always the helper. He'd lend money, without hesitation, show up anytime they needed help, moving or fixing something. Even in his 70s, he rearranged doctor appointments just to babysit on short notice. But when he had a minor surgery, none of his children offered to stay with him afterward. They all had things going on. That moment broke something in him, and instead of lashing out, he paused. He reflected. Then he made a quiet but firm decision. No more automatic yet. From now on, he would help only when it was truly needed, and when it was appreciated. He didn't become bitter, he became clear. And slowly, his children noticed. When they asked for help, they heard, "I'd love to, but I have other plans that day," or "I'm happy to assist if you handle X, Y, and Z." At first they were confused, even annoyed, but soon, they began to show more gratitude, because the help wasn't expected, it was valued. The truth is, when you pull back just enough to let others feel the weight of your absence, they begin to appreciate your presence again. You don't need to stop being kind, but kindness without boundaries becomes a disservice to you and to them. And while we're here, let's take a moment to reflect on this core truth. You are not just a parent, you are a person with your own life, dreams, time, and identity. And one of the most empowering, healing things you can do for your children and for yourself is to build a life that exists outside of them. I know that might sound strange at first. Maybe you spent decades putting your family first. Maybe you've told yourself, "I'll start taking care of myself once the kids are settled." But now that they're grown and you're in this next season of life, ask yourself, what fills your cup? Because here's what happens. When your children see that you're living, not just waiting, they admire you, they're drawn to you, and they respect you, not because they feel guilty, but because they see someone who radiates dignity and purpose. You are not here just to serve them. You're here to live fully, to rediscover parts of yourself that may have been put on pause. Whether it's joining a class, picking up a new hobby, traveling, reconnecting with old friends, or simply enjoying your mornings at your own pace, you are allowed to prioritize your own joy. And when you do, something beautiful happens. Your children start seeing you, not just as mum or dad, but as a whole, vibrant person, someone with their own story, their own strength, their own light. Now that you've begun shifting how you carry yourself, speaking up when you need to, setting healthy limits, and letting go of old expectations, you may start to notice something powerful. The tension begins to ease, the weight on your chest lighten. You're no longer walking on eggshells or hoping for scraps of appreciation. You're standing tall again, not because your children have changed overnight, but because you have. And that's the heart of. You see,
Respect isn't something we force out of others. It's something we quietly inspire by the way we live. And the moment you start living with more self-respect, everything else begins to fall into place. Let's revisit something simple but often forgotten. You matter not for what you give, not for how much you've done, but simply because you are you, and the world and your family need the version of you who feels confident, clear and calm. The version who doesn't shrink to keep the peace, but who stands in truth with love. That version changes everything. You might be surprised by how your children begin to respond. Maybe they call a little more often. Maybe they speak more gently. Maybe they start asking for your opinion and actually listen. These aren't just coincidences. These are the effects of you reclaiming your place in the relationship, not through demand or guilt, but through presence, dignity, and self-worth. But even if they don't respond right away, please don't lose heart. Sometimes, people need time to adjust. They've grown used to a version of you that always said yes, stayed quiet, or gave endlessly without asking for anything in return. When you begin to shift that dynamic, it may be uncomfortable at first, for them and even for you, but that discomfort is part of growth, and it's worth it. Remember, love and respect are not the same thing. You can love your children deeply and still set limits. You can care about them with all your heart and still say, I won't be spoken to that way. That's not harsh. That's healthy. That's what real, mature relationships look like. And in many cases, these shifts do more than just change how you're treated. They strengthen the bond. Because when your children see that you value yourself, it invites them to value you too. When they see you living a full life, enjoying your hobbies, connecting with friends, speaking with confidence, they begin to admire you again. Not out of obligation, but out of genuine respect.
So here's the question I'd like you to gently ask yourself today. Where am I still giving my power away? Is it in the way you always say yes, even when you want to say no? Is it in the way you stay silent when your voice deserves to be heard? Or maybe it's in the way you wait for their approval to feel good about yourself. Wherever that is, start there. Make one small change. Maybe it's saying, I have other plans today, but I'd love to see you another time. Maybe it's telling your son or daughter, I deserve to be spoken to respectfully, or this conversation can wait. Maybe it's taking that long postponed trip, joining a new group, or picking up that hobby you've been putting off. Small steps. That's all it takes. And please, don't think you have to be perfect. You don't have to get everything right. What matters is that you begin, that you start honoring your voice, your time, your worth, because that's where respect is born. If this message resonates with you, if you've ever sat with that quiet ache of feeling overlooked or undervalued by your own children, I want to say this from the heart. You deserve better, not because of what you did in the past, but because of who you are right now. And if you're still watching, I want to thank you for your presence, your openness, and your willingness to look inward. That takes strength. That takes courage. And that means you're already on the path back to the respect you deserve. Now I'd love to hear from you. Have you experienced moments when your children spoke to you without the respect you hoped for? Have you tried setting boundaries or stepping back emotionally? What helped you the most? Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear. Leave a comment below, even if it's just a few words. And if you found this video helpful or healing in any way, please give it a thumbs up. It truly helps others find this kind of content. And if you haven't yet, subscribe to the channel and hit that little bell so you'll always know when we post more videos to support you, uplift you, and walk alongside you. You are never too old to reclaim your voice, never too late to rebuild respect, and never too far from the love and peace you truly deserve. Thank you for spending this time with me. You are worthy, you are strong, and you are not alone. Until next time, take care, and remember, living with dignity is the most powerful message you'll ever send.